Hey guys, it's Lou. I'm back for another video. I wasn't expecting to make a video so soon. I made one about 3-4 days ago, which was a great flea market haul that I had, and I had a lot of records still that I hadn't shown. These are used vinyl from a couple of trips to my local record store. So I've got about 15-16 records, so let's get started. Most of them are used from the record store, and I got 2 at the end that are online purchases of albums that I've been wanting to get for quite some time. So the first one we have is the Tremeloes, Here Comes My Baby. And as you can probably tell from the cover, the Tremeloes are a 60s band. This is from the mid-60s. Very much psych pop, sort of mid-period Beatles, I would say, with a lot of harmonies. And, you know, I'm kind of a sucker for these 60s type of albums. Most of you, I think, should know the song Here Comes My Baby, which was the big hit off of this. Next, continuing with some psych, we have a band that gets shown, I don't know how regularly in the VC, but when they're shown, it's typically their first album, their self-titled album. This is their 3rd album from 1968, Vanilla Fudge Renaissance. And this album, unlike their first album, leans much more with self-penned material by the band. Very psych influenced, heavy on the organ, very bassy as well, excellent stuff. Having said that, most of the songs are written by the band, but one song, which is a cover that I think gets some attention from this album, is their cover of Donovan's Season of the Witch. But this is a fantastic, heavy psych, organ-drenched album. Next, we have a double live album that was recorded in 1968. It's the live adventures of Mike Bloomfield and Al Kooper. Mike Bloomfield being mostly known, I would say, probably from his time in the Paul Butterfield band, Paul Butterfield Blues Band, and Al Kooper, I guess, from Blood, Sweat and Tears. So this is a double live album. Most of the songs are cover songs. There's an appearance on this album from Carlos Santana, and also Elvin Bishop, who also was in the Paul Butterfield Blues Band. So this is a heavy blues, rock type of album, and again with a lot of cover songs on this album. Then the next album was a band that I was unfamiliar with. I just knew their name, but it ticked off a couple of boxes of stuff that I looked for. One is that the album's on the Tamla Motown label, and second, it was from 1969, so I thought I couldn't go wrong with this, and this is the band Rare Earth, and the name of this album is Get Ready, so from 1969. And I guess this is what you would expect it to sound like, although I was unfamiliar with this. You know, obviously there's a soul influence here, and there's also a psych influence. So it's really the blending of those two genres, and this is quite good. I was really happy with this. And next, a band that I've only got one other record from, which is the band Spirit. This is a best of collection, which collects Spirit's best songs from their first 4 albums, which I think are really their main albums. It leans heavy towards the first album, which is the self-titled album, and also I guess their most well-known album, which is the 12, I think it's called The 12 Dreams of Dr. Sardonicus, has 5 songs from that. So between that, 5 from there and 3 from the first album, that's most of the songs on this album. But this is excellent. I'm still looking for some early Spirit when I can find it, but this'll do until I find that. And next we have a live album by a band that I've shown a few times, and I keep finding this band out in the wild. This is Iron Butterfly and their live album, their first live album, which is it comprises songs from their first 3 albums, including a side-long version of Inagata de Vida, which is all of side 2. And this was a good find for $5. Next, we have another live album. This one, a double live album for Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, 4-Way Street. So I think this was released in 1970 or 71. And I guess the unique thing about this record is half the songs are acoustic with some really nice harmonies, and half the songs are electric. And one of my favorite bands from the 60s and early 70s is Traffic, and I've shown Traffic a few times before. An album that I didn't have on vinyl was Shootout at the Fantasy Factory, which is Traffic's album, I think their 6th album from 1973. This followed Low Spark of High Heeled Boys, which is probably one of their better known albums, and John Barleycorn as well. So this album, it only has 5 tracks, but there's some really nice extended songs on here, some really nice jamming, and a little bit less on the psych than some of their earlier albums, and more on sort of jammy, jazz, rocky kind of feel. Steve Winwood can do no wrong in my book. Fantastic vocals and organ, but one thing that doesn't really get realized a lot, except for those who really know his material, is his guitar playing, and there's some fantastic guitar playing by him on this album. And I've shown some fusion before in my videos. My top 2 fusion bands are definitely Weather Report and Mahavishnu Orchestra, but probably my 3rd favorite fusion band is Return to Forever. And this is their album, I believe this is from 1973, Hymn of the Seventh Galaxy, and of course features Chick Corea and also Stanley Clarke, who's one of my favorite bass players of all time. And next, an album that I was not familiar with at all. I only knew the name of this person through their association and membership in the band Gong, who I don't know very well as well. So this is the guitar player from Gong, Steve Hillage, and his album from 1978 called Green, and this is just fantastic. I really, really love this. One of the best of these finds that I'm enjoying. This album from 1978, how would I describe this? Probably it's a bit proggy, it's a bit electronic, a bit space rocky, some amazing guitar on here, some excellent keyboards as well. This is co-produced by Nick Mason from Pink Floyd, and having said that, I would actually say that, you know, for fans of Dark Side and fans of Wish You Were Here, I think there's some similar elements in this, which I think fans of those albums and of Pink Floyd in general would really enjoy. I really, really love what I'm hearing from this album. There's some vocals on here, but a lot of it is instrumental passages in songs and some instrumental songs, and there's even a reworking of one of Gong songs from what I've read, but really, really happy with this. This is easily an 8.5 out of 10 for me. Next, another album from 1978. This is my 3rd album from this guitarist, who is the guitarist from Roxy Music. It's Phil Manzanera. So this is my 3rd Phil Manzanera solo record. This is called K-Scope from 1978, and I would say, you know, there's some Roxy sounding stuff on here, but there's also some new wave type sounds on this, especially on the songs where the Finn brothers, Tim Finn and Neil Finn from Split Enz, Crowded House, appear on this. They appear on 3 songs, I think, and those songs sound very new wave-ish, very Split Enz sounding. And the other notable guest on this, who appears on several songs as well, is John Wetton, who is probably my favorite vocalist and bass player for the band King Crimson, in my favorite King Crimson period, which were the albums Red, Larks, Tons, and Aspic, and Starless in the Bible Black. So he's on this album, and Wetton and Manzanera went on to make an album after this, which didn't quite do as well commercially and critically. And next I have a partial live, partial studio album. I think this was released in 80 or 81 from Ian Hunter. Ian Hunter, of course, being the vocalist and main songwriter from Mott the Hoople. So there's 3 sides of this, I believe, are live, and 1 side is studio. Mick Ronson is on this album, who was in the last incarnation of Mott the Hoople before they disbanded. But he continues with Ian Hunter on this, on both the live stuff and the studio stuff. This is pretty good. It obviously includes some Mott the Hoople stuff and some solo Ian Hunter material. The next 2 are jazz albums from an artist that I've got a few CDs from. I think only 1 other vinyl record I have. This is Coleman Hawkins. This is Body and Soul, which is sort of a best of compilation. This is okay. It's not my favorite. I don't know if this is truly his best material. It's not bad. And anytime I find any Coleman Hawkins for cheap, I'll definitely pick it up. This is a double album. And then last, we have a jazz, I think a jazz classic by Count Basie, and the album, which I think is more commonly known as Atomic, or Mr. Atomic, sometimes I think, with that very famous, I think, cover. This is excellent. This is your big band jazz, very accessible. I've got a couple other of Count Basie best of collections, and I'm really happy to get this for under $10. So those were the used vinyl finds. The last 2 that I have are online purchases of albums, of vinyl records that I've wanted for quite some time. I've had no luck finding this band out in the wild, so all the albums that I have of them are online purchases. And it's one of my favorite bands from the 60s, Love. And the first one is Love's second album, Da Capo. I'm quite familiar with this album from having it previously on CD, and also have some of the songs, or most of the 5 out of the 7 songs of this I have on a best of collection as well. So that's Da Capo, the second album. And then kind of a sleeper album in some cases for Love is their 4th album, called For Sale. I really, really love this album. I think it's equally as good as their first 3 albums. This one, of course, is after the original lineup disbanded and Arthur Lee continued with a new lineup. It's much more guitar heavy than the first 3 Love albums, and I would say this is equally as good as Forever Changes, Da Capo, and the first album. It's fantastic. I love this album. All the songs are written by Arthur Lee, with one co-pen with the guitarist Jay Donnellan, I think is his name. But any fans of Love I would recommend this, and it's a little bit more on the heavier side, but still definitely Love sounding for sure. Okay guys, thanks a lot, and we'll see you next time.